So I request all participants to settle in. Please make sure your audio is muted and we request you to switch on your camera to make sure the session is interactive. This session is being streamed live on YouTube. Before we begin, I would like to clarify attendance rules. Your attendance will be recorded automatically. You must attend the session for 75% of the total duration. You must fill the post assessment form during each session. These forms are part of attendance verification. You complete these requirements, you will be considered for the certification. Before we begin today's session, I'd like to hear from you. Please take a moment and share in the chat box how excited you are for the 6-day certificate course on cybercrime intelligence and AI governance, law, mind, and machine.
Do anyone has any idea when the event will start? No, I think within 5 to 10 minutes.
Good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all present here. The day one topic for this session is cybercrime from the human mind. I am Manata, and it's my privilege to anchor today's session. This session is the part of our 6 day certificate course on cybercrime, intelligence, and AI governance, law, mind, and machine. A structured initiative designed to promote awareness, learning, and informed engagement in the field of cyber safety law, psychology, and technology. Through this session, we bring together experts, investigators, and practitioners to share real world insights into cyber threats, legal framework, investigate processes, and emerging trends. This evening marks an important step in our journey, and by the end of it, we're shaping ourselves into a group that speaks with clarity, confidence, and purpose, ready to spread awareness and safeguard our communities online. It is my honor to introduce today's distinguished speaker. Drishyaa Duggal is an AI psychology and cyber psychology evangelist, widely recognized for her thought leadership in the digital age. A 10-time TEDx speaker and a regular contributor at the International Conference on Cybercrime, Cyber Law, and Cybersecurity. Her expertise has been sought by prestigious institutions and organizations, including the United Nations, AIMS, Faculty of Management Studies at the University of Delhi, the World Summit on the Information Society, and the Foreign Correspondents Club of South Asia. She has authored the book Poesy and delivered impactful sessions on these themes ranging from cyber psychology in cybersecurity to AI governance and digital behavior, with advanced certification in cyber law and psychology, and recognition as a Triple Crown winner at Toastmaker International. Drishya brings a unique blend of academic depth, professional experience, and engaging communication. We're truly honored to welcome you, ma'am, today. Without a further ado, I would like to hand over the mic to you.
Thank you so much, Manyata. And am I audible and visible to everybody?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible and visible.
Yes, ma'am.
Great. Okay, all right. Good evening, everyone. And what's a meeting without a few technical glitches? It's happy to be. It's my pleasure, in fact, that I have so many of you attending this session, because of which there was a slight glitch also of me entering, which is a good sign. So thank you, and thank you, Manita, for such a fantastic introduction, and thank you, Rashi ma'am and team, for having me. So without any further ado, let's just start. I'll be sharing my screen. Just let me know if you are able to see it or not. All right. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So let's start.
Yes, ma'am.
So the topic for today is not something very new to all of you. It's something that you've probably heard, you've probably studied, something that you might even be curious to know for more about. So let's dive in. Cybercrime from the human mind. Now, let's keep this session as interactive as we can, because, of course, what's a session without some interaction and some questions? But let's first introduce this topic. Now, when we talk about cybercrimes, cyberspace, technology, this is something that is not a new jargon. It is something very common these days. We hear about it, we see it. In fact, there have been real life case studies that we know about it. But the twist comes here, that there is an involvement of human mind, human psyche, that we often miss out on. We often ignore. We often do not realize that when a cybercrime is happening, or any kind of crime is happening in the virtual setting, in the virtual space, there is a huge role of the human psyche, And now, here two parts are there, not just the human psyche of the person who is doing the cybercrime, but also of the person who is the victim of that cybercrime. So, for example, in a case like of cyberbullying, we would be studying why a person is doing that crime from the end of a cyberbully, but also from the end of a victim, that what exactly does he or she feel? What does he or she go through after the crime? Now, when we talk about cybercrime at its core, as we've discussed and built the space, technology is something that is definitely at hand, at play, and there is a huge role of it. But it is just a tool, it is just an instrument, a mediator, perhaps, that you're using technology as something to do that act. But the major role, the major instrument is the human mind, the human psyche. There are different motives, there are different reasons that people do a cybercrime because of, and the implications of that cybercrime are further more. So, first aspect is this of the topic of cybercrime and human mind. The second aspect that I would like to cover is that when we are talking about cybercrime, it is not limited to machines, technology, or a set of networks, but again, the human mind plays
Ma'am,
a very important role. Yes, am I audible or
ma'am, your screen is not visible properly to us.
is it visible right now?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
All right, we can just merge it. Yeah, now is it audible and visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. All right. So, when we're talking about cybercrime, this is what I wanted to discuss in respect to the human mind. But when we are talking about the human mind, it's not just limited to that. There is a very important field at play, which is called cyber psychology. Now, give me a virtual raise of hands. How many of you have heard of the field cyber psychology? I see a lot of hands. That's great. Okay, there is a constant raise of hands and thumbs up, which is
Thank you.
okay. That means that you guys are
Uh,
aware of the field of cyber psychology. So, when
Sorry
we're
to
talking,
interrupt, ma'am. Your PPT is not visible.
is it still not visible?
No, ma'am, it's not visible.
All right. In case that issue is coming, should I be sharing to one of the team? Should I share it with you, Rashi ma'am?
Okay. Ma'am, please share the PPT. We will present it for you.
All right. Just give me a moment. Are my screen still visible?
Yes, ma'am, you are visible.
No, no, no. Is my screen visible as in the
No,
presentation
ma'am.
screen?
Your screen is not visible.
Okay, all right. I've shared it with, okay, just give me a second. All right, I've shared the PPT and I hope you have received it.
Audible?
You are audible, but your PPT is not visible.
Audible. I think till the time the PPT is getting set up, let's just move on with the topic. No worries, we'll be getting the PPT soon, so let's not be wasting any more time. But yes, so as we were talking about cyber psychology, and I see that you guys have quite a lot of knowledge in that. So first of all, can I have a few answers in the chat board that what exactly is cyber psychology for you? Just two adjectives at the max, not more than that. One or two, or even if somebody wants to unmute their mic and say, you are free to do so. Any responses?
Hello. Yeah, I think the cyber crime, it's some civil or criminal offense which is done with using, computer network or any kind of networking device.
All right. Thank you for your response. Absolutely correct. When we are talking about cybercrime, it is that if you're doing any kind of crime or any kind of illegal, unethical act using the virtual space, the digital media, networks, etc., that is a cybercrime. But now, when we are talking about cyber psychology, it is the newly emerging field of studying the relationship between human behavior and technology, internet. Very rightly said, Jack Alexa, that there is a role of human behavior on internet and digital platforms, and that is exactly what cyber psychology studies. And the reason that we are talking about cyber psychology right now in this session is because as crimes are emerging and as new technologies are coming up, cyber criminals are using new technologies, advanced technologies, but it's not just limited to that. They are also using principles of human behavior. They study human patterns, human emotions, and we will soon be coming to these cognitive biases and how the cyber criminals make use of the emotions. Yeah, great. I think now the PPT is there. Can we move on to the next slide? Yeah, I think we have covered the introduction. The next slide, please. All right. Now, coming to the psyche of cybercriminals, one of the core study or the core aspects of studying cyber psychology comes to understanding the psyche of cybercriminals and the psyche of victims. Now, when we understand the psyche of cybercriminals, what exactly is happening? What exactly do you think is going on? That if a particular person is doing a particular cybercrime, is it just because of money? Or is it just because of some monetary or power or authority reason? No, not at all. The reasons vary. The reasons vary. In fact, there are psychological reasons which are more prominent than the materialistic reasons. And of course, when we talk about it in the biological sense, we do have that explanation too. But when we are talking in the psychological sense, through the psyche of cyber criminals, we are able to understand and grasp that knowledge about the motives of cyber criminals. Now, for example, if we take a hypothetical example of again cyberbullying. Now, if a child who is in 10th grade is bullying a child of, maybe 8th grade in this hypothetical example, here the reason might not be money, because at that age, a child is not looking for money or something of a pocket money sort that they would want to do a cybercrime. But other reasons may be getting of attention, maybe posing themselves as superior, maybe even having that authority and establishing their authority. Maybe in one setting of their life, which is the real offline setting, they do not get that attention, they do not get that care. And as a result, they turn to the cyberspace as one of the things they want to vent out their anger on, or where they want to really, establish their authority on. Now, in this example, we get to know that the reason of committing any kind of cybercrime or virtual offense is not just monetary, but there are reasons which are psychological and which are more impactful. Now, in this slide, as you will read, there is a sense of urgency or an aura of authority that often gets people to react. Now, a cyber criminal, apart from their motives, now how they hack the mind of a person, how they trap us into falling into a cybercrime, there are like two major aspects: urgency, authority. These are the two things, and fear also. These are the three things with which they have the role play, and they get us in the trap of falling into that cybercrime. So as you will read, the reason people get immediately reactive or defensive of the situation is because their amygdala suddenly gets a spike up when there is a situation of urgency, or when there is a situation of fear or authority. One suddenly spikes up the reaction in the amygdala, which in turn gives a reaction in their behavior. They further react that, okay, I need to do something quick. Either I need to fight or I need to flight from the situation. And that is how your mind and body is also connected. So don't think that if a cybercrime is happening, it's only happening in this technological space, because it is not. When a cybercrime is happening, it is happening at various fronts: at the front of technology, at the front of your mindset, your psychology, and even at your social front. It might also hamper how you interact with the world, how you view the world. For someone who has seen a cybercrime, their worldview might differ from a person who has not seen a cybercrime at all. So these are certain things which goes in the psyche of a cyber criminal. And one of the very important points that I've mentioned here is that understanding the psychology of cyber crimes and cyber attacks and hackers mindset is essential for developing defensive strategies and also resilient strategies for countering these kind of cyber crimes. Can we move on to the next slide, please? All right. Now we come to one of the most interesting aspects of cyber psychology and studying cyber crime through the lens of cyber psychology. Now, when we are talking about cyber crimes, we've spoken a lot about how it's, psychological, it's not just technological, and how technology is just a medium or a tool. But two things are at play here, which is the online disinhibition effect of cyber psychology and the role of anonymity. Now, let me explain. Online disinhibition effect is something which you will see, like for example, how many of you have seen that you would see comments, very harsh comments on celebrity pages or on very famous personalities. You'll see harsh trolling comments, and you'll just think to yourself that I don't think that this would happen in the real world setting. I don't think that this person would say the same thing in the offline setting, but it is happening on social media, on the online platform, in the comment section. How many of you have, seen this? Please give me a virtual raise of hands, please. A lot of you. A lot of you. Now, if you've seen this, if you've even witnessed this, you've probably seen the online disinhibition effect, which talks about how people behave differently in the online setting as compared to the offline setting. Like, for example, a person would behave differently in the online setting. If we take the example of trolls, a troll might write harsh comments to a celebrity page or to anybody's page, but that same person might be a total introvert, a total quiet silent person in the real world setting, but they are the complete opposite in the online world. And the reason for that is anonymity. One of the major reasons. People think that because in the online space nobody is directly coming to them, they are not directly facing anybody, so they feel that they are in their comfort zone and there is no danger at all. And because of that anonymity, there is a huge lack of accountability as well that people feel. They feel that they are anonymous, so their actions are not accountable. But this is not true. On social media, on technology, whatever is happening, one is witnessing that, one is doing that action, so they should be mindful of what they are saying, what they are doing. But online disinhibition effect and anonymity is something that you will see a lot in the sector of cybercrime and in the sector of cyberspace, because these are the two things at play in the interaction of technology and the human mind. Next slide, please. Now, cognitive biases which are exploited in the scam designs and phishing. Now, how many of you know here what is phishing? I'm sure a lot of you. With the responses that I've been getting, I'm sure that, yes, again, there are a lot of thumbs ups and raise of hands. Thank you for that. And thank you for making this session interactive. Now, Phishing is, in simple words, we say that the attackers or the hackers are trying to impersonate, maybe a trustworthy brand, a trustworthy, entity, authority through mails, text, etc. But in the end, the end goal is to take away the sensitive information, the data. Now, there is a very interesting analogy here that I would like to present when we are talking about phishing. While it is not really phishing with a F, but rather with a PH, but the phishing is very similar to the fishing that one does in the sea or in the ocean. And the reason behind this is, think of it in this way: when you go to fishing, there is a hook, and on that hook you put a bait, right, for the fishes to come. Similarly, in this setting, in the online setting, the scammers, the hackers, they do phishing. They put on a bait. The hook is basically the email. That email has a bait, which might be the company that they are trying to copy. And when that bait reaches that company, or when that bait reaches to a person, and they think that, oh, this is quite authentic, I would really like to, open this mail. That is something where the trap is there and the fish has fallen to the hook. And that is why I feel the real world fishing is very similar to PH fishing. And you'll see that the role of fishing is like, fishing is something that is not just technological. Again, there is a huge role of psychology here. Let's understand how. Next slide, please. So, cognitive biases. What are cognitive biases, by the way? Cognitive biases are those systematic ways of thinking that deviate you from rationality. So, when we are talking about cognitive biases, these are things that actually play a role in you falling into a trap of cybercrime. And there are different types of cognitive biases. There is no set number of cognitive biases, but they surely tell our human thinking pattern, our behavior pattern. Very famous cognitive biases include confirmation bias, the authority bias, the urgency bias, and many more. So when we talk about the confirmation bias is basically when you look out for information that actually reinforces your beliefs. Like, for example, if you believe that a certain kind of behavior is okay online, now when you will go online and you will see other people also doing that behavior, you will say that, oh, yeah, this is right. I think I was thinking right that this kind of behavior is okay. And you are basically looking for reasons to actually validate your own behavior and thinking. That is the role and part of confirmation bias, and it plays a huge role of your interaction in the social media aspect and technology. Now let's talk about authority bias, urgency effect, trust default, and pattern recognition. The reason for discussing these four is because these are the four things that are actually relevant in terms of scam design and phishing. So, when we talk about authority bias, you will realize that there have been cases that one, in one of the cases, you'll feel that the person who, fell in the trap of a cybercrime was because of pressure of authority, or maybe replication of authority. A person tried to replicate that, yes, I'm from so and so company, from so and so position. And the person thought, the victim thought that, okay, maybe they are right, this is authentic, there is a person above me, authentic and authority. That is why, to comply with that authority without even verifying, they said okay and they fell in the trap. That is a part of authority bias. When you think that somebody is superior than you, when you think some entity or some person is at an authority level as compared to you, you tend to comply, you tend to say okay. That is a part of authority bias. Now coming to urgency effect. Have you ever heard of things like a scam has happened, and in that scam it was something like that you have to give OTP within 15 seconds, otherwise the OTP will get lost, or maybe you have to click on this button within this period of time, otherwise it is lost. Now, to get it or lose it, to get it right now or to lose the access to it, that is what plays in the psychology of the victim. The victim thinks that, no, I don't want to lose it, I don't want to miss out on it, I don't want to get into the FOMO that, oh, I missed out on it. So because of that urgency effect, that either do it now or regret it later, that is also one of the reasons when the emails are framed in such a manner by the cyber criminals, that they will be having that urgency effect, that you have to click right now, you have to share right now, otherwise you'll lose the access. Now that fear of missing out, that fear of losing out on that information, is also what makes people fall in the trap of phishing. Now, coming to trust default. Now, when we talk about how we trust each other, how we relate with each other, interact with each other. I mean, there is no way, defined way of saying that, okay, you have a structured way of trusting. It's like if you feel, or if you have a feeling that the other person's intention is good, there are chances that you will trust. You will say that, okay, I find the person genuine, I will trust. Similarly, in the online setting, humans naturally assume that benign intent, okay, that they try to just, see the intent as it is. And especially when things feel familiar, when bonds feel familiar, again, when there is a familiar name, a familiar company, a familiar linguistic language, people try to trust it. And that is by default, they're trusting it without verification. That is part of trust default, because of which another aspect of why phishing happens. Now, coming last but not the least, pattern recognition. Now, there are different email templates, there are different messaging templates, etc. While a cybercrime is happening, or if a cyber criminal is making a template like that, of course they are going to make sure that the email or the template or the message looks completely acceptable, looks completely, authentic. In fact, it looks something that nobody can actually doubt on it. And that is part of pattern recognition. But another aspect of pattern recognition that I would like to, I think the PPT is not visible, no worries, we'll be working on it. I think, is PPT visible? Because the PPT is visible to me right now.
It's
Yes.
visible, ma'am.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. I see a few hands. Thank you. Thank you for the confirmation. Now, talking about pattern recognition, as we just spoke about how, when things feel familiar, they are trying to make it exactly like nobody would doubt it. But another aspect of pattern recognition is that any cybercrime is happening, it is happening by keeping in mind the mind of the victim, the human psyche, the human behavior patterns. So, pattern recognition from the end of a cyber criminal. If a cyber criminal is, committing a cybercrime, they are doing their homework of studying the human patterns, of studying the human psyche, that they know, if I will include this in the email, there is no sure short way that the person for sure will fall in the trap. But if I follow this template, which is, something which is very familiar to their eyes, or if I do include these sentences that do it right now within 15 seconds, or you would lose the access. If they include these things, what are they doing? They're studying our psyche, they're studying our human patterns. So the pattern recognition comes in two ways: in replicating the familiarity in terms of email, text, etc. And the second thing is that actually recognizing the patterns of us humans, our behaviors, our emotions, our emotional cues. Now, that is the role of cognitive biases in us falling in scams and phishing. Now, can we move on to the next slide, please? Coming to the emotional triggers in ransomware and sextortion. Now, how many of you know what is ransomware and sextortion? Please give me a virtual raise of hands. Quite a lot of you. Great to see that you guys are quite active here, which is nice. Now, coming to this. Again, now when we are coming to ransomwares and sextortion, now trust is something that is at, at a major role play. A lot of times people are playing on trust. They first build up the trust, they first build up the relationship, and through that, a lot of times sextortion is happening. Ransomware, on the other hand, when we are talking, that is a very, shortcut game. That, for example, ransomware wouldn't take much time to happen. It can happen actually in, in a matter of few hours, in a matter of few minutes. So when we're talking about these kind of cyber crimes like ransomware and sextortion, we need to first realize that our psychology is at play again. Don't forget this, that our psychology is at play at any kind of cybercrime is happening. And here, when we are talking about ransomware and sextortion, sorry, somebody was saying something. Okay, I'll continue. So, when we are talking about these two things, first, our mind thinks emotionally rather than logically. Our mind thinks psychologically. We first see any kind of, even a technical truth that is, in front of you. Consciously, you would know that this is what I'm seeing at the face value. But subconsciously, you would think about it emotionally. In your hearts of heart, you will see it through the lens of your emotions rather than logic. So, one thing that we get to know here is, please note that emotion overrides logic. Logic will be there, emotions will be there, but emotion will, play a further more role. Because a lot of times you must have heard this also, that there are studies which say that how our mind is not able to distinguish between imagination and reality. And that is true. Because our mind is not able to distinguish between the two, it becomes our job to be conscious, to be actually very determinedly conscious about making sure that we do not, fall ourselves into the hallucinations that our mind sets us to in the situation of panic and fear when faced with cybercrimes. But at the first place, we need to be more resilient as well. So, coming to ransomware and sextortion, so as we were discussing, it operates by hijacking emotional circuits rather than logic. So, again, the role of emotion is far more. There is a fear of loss, a public exposure, irreversible damage that creates psychological paralysis. Now, when this happens, there is a lot of apprehensions happening in the human mind. There are a lot of overthinking paradoxes that are happening, which actually leads you to be in a psychological paralysis. So, when we talk about ransomware, it exploits loss aversion. The pain of losing data feels stronger than the cost of pain, which means that when a ransomware is happening, your first intent, your first thought is that how do I recover it, and how do I recover from this fear of losing my data to someone else, my sensitive data. Your vulnerability is something that is getting exploited. So your vulnerability and fear is at play here. Secondly, in sextortion, weaponizes shame and social fear, forcing silence and compliance. Now, in sextortion, it's a very sensitive topic, and that is also the reason why the role of shame and social fear is there. Because in sextortion, nobody ever wants their vulnerability to be used. They never want their sensitive information to be used. But in sextortion, the shame is the main thing that is happening. The cyber criminals are trying to generate shame. They are trying to indulge the person, the victim, in that fear so that they comply. Now, further, once emotion dominates, rational evaluation collapses. The mind seeks the fastest way to restore emotional safety, not the smartest solution. Now, the reason that I've said not the smartest solution is because when you are in a situation of panic, you're quickly, thinking and brainstorming that how do I get out? How do I get my mind safe? Again, you won't get answers which are really, really sound. You will get answers which are generating from a state of panic. So it's always better that in a state of panic, firstly, calm down, try to seek help from somebody else if you are not able to go through that cyber criminal situation alone. And secondly, in any kind of cybercrime, if faced with even with the early signs, please seek help. Please do not be don't be neglectful, don't be mindless of seeking help, because prevention is better than cure. If you prevent yourself today, you are preventing yourself from a lot of things. If you're preventing yourself from cybercrime, you're not just preventing yourself from something that is a crime, but also from a psychological implication, psychological impact. So preventing yourself from a cybercrime is equivalent to preventing yourself from the psychological trauma as well. So think about it. Next slide, please. Psychological profiling of cyber offenders. Now, another important topic, because when you are trying to understand the psyche of cyber criminals, this is a very, very important topic. Now, what does the psychological profiling mean here? Psychological profiling of cyber criminals means that you are trying to understand and analyze their behavior patterns, their emotional cues, their data, their background, their linguistics, traces, etc. And through this, the reason it is important to understand is through this, you are able to understand the cybercrime that is happening, the cyber criminal, their psyche, their motives, and why. Why is the cybercrime happening? Why is that cyber criminal doing that crime? What is going inside the mind of that cyber criminal? For any framework to be built, for any strategy to be built, it is important to understand the human mind first, because only when the human mind is at full understanding and at full analysis, you will be able to develop an effective and fulfilling strategy to counter these kind of crimes. That is the reason that it becomes very important to recognize and understand the cyber criminals through psychological profiling of cybercrime. cyber criminal offenders and cyber offenders. So when we are talking about the profiling, it is often linked to certain characteristics, like here I've mentioned, often linked to thrill seeking, financial gain, ideology, or the important dark triad traits. Now the dark triad traits include the narcissism, machiavellianism, and psychopathy. These are certain things that one would assess a cyber criminal on. If a cyber criminal has these traits, or if they have lack of empathy, their motives are related to thrill seeking, financial gain, etc. So these are certain indicators. So as we discussed, the why is important, and we get to know their motive as well. So it helps us understand why the cyber criminals do what they do, how they think. Some do it for the money, we were talking about it earlier, but some do it for the excitement, and others to get back at someone. By knowing these reasons, we can make better plans to stop them. So again, the reasons can vary. The reasons are not just limited to money, materialisticness, or even your psyche, your psychological reasons. The reasons are plenty. It could be maybe revenge. It could be maybe monetary reason. It could be authority. It could be maybe getting attention, maybe refuge. A lot of reasons are there, and you get to know these reasons as psychological profiling happens. Next slide, please. Now, victim compliance psychology. When we talk about the victim compliance psychology, it talks about how an individual just gives in, or you can say complies with the request, or with the actions of somebody else, just complies without even asking questions or verification, simply because of various reasons. Again, it could be authority, it could be a social influence, or it could be a coercion that is happening. Because of these certain reasons, a victim can simply, or an individual just complies to the situation with requests, with pressures, with questions, without even thinking, much. Now the reasons for victim compliance psychology can be plenty, and here are, in this blue circle, you will be able to see the various reasons which are there. Now coercive control is one of the aspects that that is the most direct one. Talking about cognitive biases and the role of it in scams, this is another reason why people actually fall into the victim compliance thing. And talking about trauma responses. Now trauma is something that happens after you. Of course, I don't need to actually explain what is trauma and how it happens, but what you do need to understand here, and I need to explain, is that after going through a certain kind of trauma, a person can become apprehensive about what is happening, what they are doing, and how to deal with a particular kind of situation. So for example, a hypothetical situation, if somebody has gone through I would say, if somebody has gone through a kind of a trauma, or a kind of a very traumatic experience, their experience after that whole thing would be completely different. They might comply out of fear, they might comply out of the trauma of that thing, that they have that traumatic memory of that experience, that they think that I really need to comply. That is one of the reasons. So post traumatic responses are also things, and during the traumatic experience, that is also one of the reasons that victims comply. Talking about the impact of trauma, we just discussed it. Now, there is also something known as the foot in the door technique, a very interesting technique that, for example, has it happened with you? A very vague example I would give, but let's make it. For example, if you go to a shop and you are just roaming around, but the salesperson asks you that, would you please like to buy this set of perfumes that I have, and you think that no, not really, I wouldn't be interested in that. But then the person is like, okay, maybe not this set of perfume, maybe three perfumes. You again say that no, 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 I wouldn't buy it, I am not really interested in that. And in the third aspect, the salesperson says that okay, maybe you can buy this mini tester perfume. Now what are the chances? Are there chances that in the third time you are going to agree with it? You're going to say that yes, I would like to, okay, sure, I will buy that little thing. Yes, I see a few hands and a few thumbs up. So this, what we discussed right now, that is foot in the door technique. And in the case of the online setting, this might happen in the sense, like for example, a cyber criminal or a hacker might ask a small favor, and that, or a big favor, and once you decline it, then comes another question that you might, out of courtesy, out of politeness, would like to agree with it, would like to, answer it. So that is the foot in the door technique in psychology, very famously, studied. Now, talking about cybercrime from the human mind, here I would like to discuss desperation, fear, helplessness, authority, and urgency. Now, the reason that I've kept this, aside apart is because these are the most common things being used in the case of cybercrimes and cyber criminals. Now, cybercrimes happen, and when cyber criminals are doing it, they use desperation. They will put you in a situation where you feel desperate. They will put you in a situation where there is fear. How many of you have heard of digital arrest? Please raise your hands. There are ways of hands. So you have heard of digital arrest. What happens in that? Now, in that, it's not firstly in the digital arrest, there are a ton of things that are happening in this emotional and psychological level. Firstly, the person would try to, replicate as somebody else that, okay, I am so and so and I'm in authority. And now I would like to, inform you that this has happened. They are firstly building that trust. That trust is happening that, okay, you can trust me. Then second thing comes, they are trying to build desperation that this has happened and now the repercussions for this can be this. Now there is fear and also desperation. Because of fear there is desperation. You feel desperate that how do I get out of this situation, and that leads to helplessness. In that digital arrest situation, one is helpless that I cannot move, I cannot, call somebody, I cannot do this. And as a result, of these four factors, there is urgency in which the person does, one of the acts that maybe could be, giving the money, giving the data. And in that urgency, that sense of urgency and fear, that happens. Now, these five things you can note it separately, because these are something you will see very quite often happening, and very not just happening but being used by the cyber criminals. Last but not the least, anonymity and exploiting vulnerability. We were talking about online disinhibition effect, and there is a huge role of anonymity in it. That people think that just because they're anonymous, they can take advantage of not being visible, not being caught exactly. So, anonymity is at play here, and that is also one of the reasons that victims comply. They are, if somebody is replicating or trying to mimic and fall in the make them fall in the trap that they're talking to someone who is in authority. If there is anonymity, how will the other person verify that whether that person is actually in authority or not? So here is the role of anonymity. If they don't know if the figure is in authority or not, they would fall in the trap if they're just blindly believing in it. And last but not the least, exploiting vulnerability. Any kind of sensitive data, sensitive information, or any kind of vulnerability, when that when that is something being used, that is the most sensitive situation. And one does not want to ever, want their sensitive information or their vulnerable information to be out. So if a scammer or a hacker is trying to threaten a victim that this information will be leaked if you don't give the data, if you don't give the ransom, they are trying to exploit the vulnerability and the sensitivity of that situation of that person. Now, these are the certain points which you can keep in mind as to why the victims comply, and what is going on in the psyche of the individuals, of the victims, that they comply. So, I would say so mindlessly, sometimes out of fear, out of the trauma, or sometimes just as it is because of the situation they are in. Next slide, please. Now, here, when we are talking about the cognitive biases and the important points of victim compliance psychology, these three, have a major role in it, and we'll explain why. Firstly, perceived authority recognition. Now, again, comes to the factor of authority. If there is a authority, or if the victim thinks that who they are talking to, as in the scammer or the hacker, they are in authority, there are chances they will comply as it is. They will comply out of fear. They will comply thinking that, oh, the person is bigger than me, they are in authority. So there is an automatic response or defensive response from their side as well. So that is called perceived authority recognition. Talking to threat magnification, when we were just discussing about digital arrest, This is one of the things happening in that time. Threat magnification, that whatever situation comes to the mind of the victim, or whatever situation is being explained to the victim is going to think more about it. They are going to overthinking paradox is going to happen there. They are going to think, if the situation is this much, but because of the way it has been told, and in the way that they have been injected with fear, because of that, that situation is going to be this big and this big. It's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger in the mind of the victim. And again, the mind does not easily distinguish between the reality and the imagination. That is also one of the reasons why the person would fall in that apprehension. They would feel anxious about it, and because of that threat magnification, they would comply. Now, thirdly, coming to rationalization, this is actually very interesting, and we see rationalization happening many times in our life, in our daily lives. And rationalization is basically something when, if the victim is complying, they're complying because they're trying to rationalize their act. Like, for example, if they're trying to rationalize because they are thinking that, okay, it's the authority figure, so I should comply, even that is a form of rationalization. If they think that maybe I should do this for the better good, that is also a kind of rationalization. So rationalization can vary from, situation to situation and belief to belief. It also depends what the person is believing in, how they believe in, and what is their thought process is also, like, the base of rationalization that is happening there. Now, victims construct justification for compliance, framing actions as temporary measures or necessary exceptions. Now, rationalization is also something that you'll see quite often, because this is the most common refuge that one would, just try to dissolve their actions, or just, dismiss their actions by trying to justify it or rationalize it with a belief or with a statement. Next slide, please. Okay. So, as we are coming to the end of this, let's discuss this very interesting topic. Now, you must be wondering that we've discussed so much that, oh my God, psychology, mindset, emotions, everything is so much psychology. Then what's the role of technology and intelligence? So, here we come to the reason of why do even intelligent people fall in the trap of, cyber crimes? Has it ever crossed your mind that you were thinking that, okay, how can somebody fall in a scam so easily, even if they are so intelligent? Or how can somebody so smart be falling into a crime or a cybercrime and become victim to that? How many of you have ever thought, about that? Just give me a virtual raise of hands. Okay, there are a lot of thumbs up and a lot of raise of hands. Great. Now, firstly, I'm really happy to see this, that you guys are, thinking in that way, that why do even intelligent people in that, fall in that crime? So the clear cut answer here is that I want you to remember always is that intelligence is not equal to emotions. And as we were discussing, emotions is going to override the logic. If there is a logic, but you will first see it in the emotional sense. If there is a technical truth, you will first see it through the lens of your emotions, your psychology, and then you will actually, think about the whole situation. So, because even if somebody is very intelligent, or even if somebody is very smart, that does not guarantee that they will not fall in the crime, in the victim aspect of cybercrimes. That does not mean that they will not become victim to cybercrime. And that is because they will first think emotionally and then intelligently. And when these situations arise of fear, desperation, of panic, one does not, first reaction is not about thinking about it intelligently, but rather thinking about it in a very, emotional way, in a very disturbed, panicky manner. So that is one of the reasons. Second reasons that we come to is that, for example, when a cybercrime is happening, a cybercrime is happening, a cyber criminal would look for opportunities. They would not be, sending the emails or the phishing emails, scamming emails in the most common time. They would rather send emails in a time when they know that the other person is very, very, busy with their task. The person is very busy with what they are doing. They would not really apply their mind. If you know that if the person is going to be busy at that hour, and they're not going to really, check it, it's best time for the cyber criminals, right? And That is why, for example, if somebody is in the office and in the most working hour in that time, and the cyber criminal knows that, and the cyber criminal also knows that during this time they are multitasking, they are maybe checking emails, they're reporting to their clients, they're making phone calls. At that time they will send an email of that replicating that I'm from so and so company, from so and so authority, and we've been having a deal for maybe the past 5 months, and now today I would like to complete the deal. Just click on this email and you will find my proposal. Now during that time, the employee might not really, while actually multitasking, might not think that is this email correct, is this email safe, is this email verifiable. They would not think about it. Why? Because they're multitasking, they are in that most effective and most workloaded hour of the day, and as a result they will press that link, and boom, you are in the trap of cybercrime. That is another reason why even intelligent people fall in the trap of cybercrime. So two things that we discussed: firstly, intelligence is not equal to emotions, and secondly, that when there is a lot of multitasking happening, a lot of cognitive load is here. Okay, cognitively they are trying to apply their mind everywhere possible, wherever they think it's necessary. They are not really focusing on one task. So because of that lack of focus, the attackers are actually signaling, attackers are actually focusing to attack at that hour, at that time. So these are the two very important reasons. And attackers would succeed if they are striking at moments of distraction, fatigue, at emotional engagement, when the cognitive load is very high. And the click is not ignorance, but it is automatic behavior under cognitive overload and multitasking. Next slide, please. So let's discuss this hypothetical example that an IT professional opens an email titled Updated Internal Policy Action Required during a busy workday. Again, the keyword here, busy workday. And the clicks that attachment without verifying, the second keyword, without verifying. Now what happens here? Multitasking is happening, which lowers the attention. The cognitive overload is also high because a lot of tasks are happening, yes. And then the routine actions become very automatic, because the automatic response that is going to be, that is what is going to come out at the first glance, at a response, at an instinct. And last but not the least, the brain assumes that if the email is looking familiar, if it is looking very similar, it is not looking very out of the blue, the mind is going to trust it. And as a result, again, the trap is there set, and the person falls into the trap because of that situation. So even expertise fails when cognitive load is high, which is simply humorously, satirically just telling you that when your cognitive load is high here, when you are just cognitively busy, even when there might be the easiest task or the easiest recognizing scam there, but you might not be able to identify it. Why? Because you're multitasking, or if the attention deficit is there, or the cognitive load is high. Now, next slide, please. Okay. Now, one thing that I want you all to realize and notice and note down here is that whatever we've studied so far, whatever we've discussed so far, one thing that if you noticed was common was without verification, without resilience. Resilience and verification is very important to prevent ourselves from cyber crimes, to prevent ourselves from even falling in the trap of these cyber crimes and cyber criminals. Firstly, we need to verify every piece of information we get. We need to verify and be mindful of what we are consuming. And secondly, we need to be very aware. We need to be aware of the patterns that are happening and be resilient also. If firstly, your aim should be that you should be preventing yourself from cyber crimes, and cyber crimes not at a just technological level but also the psychological level. But at the worst case scenario, if somebody falls in the trap of cyber crime, they should be able to resiliently bounce back. They should be able to have that resilience to again bounce back in that psychological state, because the psychological weight of the problem, the psychological implication of the problem is far more than the technological problem. Money is something that can be gained back, but what about that traumatic psychological experience? How will you cure that? So be mindful, be aware, but at the same time, verify and be resilient. Now, human patterns, cognitive bias, emotions, anonymity. These four things are something that we discussed has been at play with respect to cybercrimes, cybercriminals, and psyche of cybercrimes. So, whenever an attack is happening, human patterns are involved. Whenever a cyber criminal is trying to plan something, they use the cognitive biases against us. Whenever they know they have to actually, fight against us to make us fall in the trap, there is a role of emotions. And of course, to make it a success, anonymity is also playing a role in trying to, you know, dupe somebody. Next slide, please. Okay. Last but not the least, this is, I believe, the last slide of the session. So, building psychological resilience. We were just talking about how resilience is important and yada, yada, yada. But how do we actually come from theoretical resilience to practical resilience? Because you see, it's very important and very easy to talk about resilience. It's very easy to talk about that, yeah, we should be mindful, resilient, etc., etc. But how do we practice it in the practical setting? Let's discuss this. Firstly, cognitive bias awareness. Now, there are trainings, there are campaigns. In fact, a huge thanks to the organizers of this workshop for hosting this workshop so that we are able to know further and more, become more aware of these things that are happening. Firstly, engaging yourself in these kind of events, trying to know more about it through workshops, that is one of the reasons that people can get awareness from it, and that is one of the mediums through which people can get awareness from it. So cognitive bias awareness training must teach recognition of automatic thinking patterns, not just security protocols. Understanding how biases operate enable conscious intervention. In simple words, it basically means that any kind of training that is happening and in any kind of awareness session that we are we are trying to understand ourselves better, we don't just need to understand the technology, but we also need to understand and be aware of the cognitive understanding and of the cognitive biases that we just discussed. If you remember the confirmation bias, the urgency effect, the authority bias, we need to be more aware of this so that we can build the frameworks accordingly. Secondly, friction design. Security systems should introduce deliberate friction at decision points, creating pause opportunities for rational analysis to engage before action. So if any kind of security breach is there, there should be some friction. There should be 2 to 3 friction actions. Friction actions basically meaning that if a cybercrime is happening, that cybercrime can start at can stop at one stage. They are able to recognize it. The security systems are able to recognize it so that it does not reach the victim. The victim does not become a victim. So these friction is basically different stages of security that should be there so that there is better verification and there is better prevention from these cybercrimes. And third, verification culture, again, it comes to verifying whatever we see, whatever we consume, because it's the most important practice that you can do. Organizations must normalize verification procedures, removing stigma and creating environments where question authority is expected, not punished. Again, coming to the security systems, that more verification needs to be there, more verifying questions needs to be there so that we can be prevented rather than be cured. Prevention is always better than cure. And last but not the least, scenario based training. If there are these case scenarios being discussed in workshops, in sessions, these are the best ways to actually know about cybercrimes and also to know ways to deal and cope with cybercrimes. So realistic phishing simulations create muscle memory for threat recognition, operating faster than conscious analysis when real attacks occur. So, hypothetically, if we are discussing cases and there is a role play of artificial role play, of course, hypothetical role play of a phishing scam or a cybercrime that is happening, a conversation only, even a role play in the form of conversation is happening. It is trying to prepare you from that scenario. It is trying to prepare you what to do, what not to do, how to feel, how not to feel during that situation. So you are already prepared before going in that situation. If you ever have to deal with that situation, you are already prepared. Next slide, please. Yes, it was the last slide of the session. And thank you so much for having me here. It has been the pleasure has been mine to be here and deliver this session to you. A huge thanks to Rashi ma'am and the whole team for having me here. And it has been a pleasure to even after all these technical glitches that happened, we were able to come to the end to this session. And I hope I was able to give you some value, some insight. And I hope to seeing you guys more aware, more mindful. And thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for this enlightening session. This discussion has set a strong foundation for all of us learners and practitioners in the digital safety law and innovation space. We are now opening the floor for questions. Participants, please drop your questions in the chat box. If you wish to speak, please raise your hands and I'll call you one by one. We'll take as many questions as the time allows.
It's really great to see a lot of you having such sweet comments. And I also see, I think there is a question which says from Sahil that what is the true weak point in cybercrime technology or human mind with reason? Okay, great question. And when we are talking about the weakness, firstly, everything is a two-edged sword here in your human mind. When you are facing any kind of situation, it can go both sides. There are pros, there are cons, you know that. But if I have to talk about weakness, it's the cognitive biases. And the reason for me calling it a weakness is, again, you can use these cognitive biases as a strength also. These are not necessarily just weakness, but they can act as weakness if you deviate yourself from rationality. So, for example, when we were discussing authority bias, urgency bias, these can work against us as well. Like if you are in that pressure of urgency, that, for example, hypothetically, there is a crime email that within 15 seconds you have to press this or otherwise it would go. That fear of losing out the information, that urgency, that urgent behavior is actually signaling you that you have to act right now. So cognitive biases in respect to technology and the human mind is something that can actually work against us. So we need to be very mindful that when we are talking about cognitive biases, how we can use them as a strength instead and not make them as a weakness for us. I hope that answers your question. There is another, I think, question that, ma'am, sometimes there are emails that steal our data just when we open them without even clicking on any links. What can we do in such cases to protect ourselves? So, in these cases, of course, firstly, there are many cases that you have to click on it, only then it would just take away your data. But in other cases as well, which are rare, so you have to, of course, be prepared yourself. You have to have the antivirus in your the basic, the most, I would say, the primary step is to have installed the antivirus in your systems. And also be assured, be aware that you are not mindlessly giving your data away. So for example, a lot of times we are just mindlessly giving our data. There is this offer, I will give my data. There is this kind of discount that I'm getting, I will give my data. So be aware that you're not giving your data everywhere, because if you're just going to give your data everywhere, you don't know where it is going to be used, and you never know how it is going to be used. So it can be very scary at times. So be very aware where you give your data and be mindful of these cyber hygiene practices. Then there is, ma'am, could you explain how will the lifestyle of a cybersecurity in sorry, how will be the lifestyle of a cybersecurity engineer in the beginning? I'm not really getting the question. Like, what exactly? would you want to know in the lifestyle aspect? As in, would you be asking the career trajectory of the person? If you can make it clear, you can unmute yourself. Okay, there are more questions. Sorry, I'm not able to hear you. I'm really sorry. Your voice is not clear. Sorry, could you say it one more time? Okay. How so far what I could understand is that you are trying to ask that how would they be living as a like cybersecurity engineer? Am I getting it right? Okay. So, firstly, when we are talking about the lifestyle of a cybersecurity engineer in the beginning, I think I'm not the right person to answer this question because I work in the space of cyber psychology and AI psychology. So, I think a cybersecurity expert in the following 5 days, which is I'm sure there is a beautiful lineup of speakers, a very insightful lineup of speakers. So, please save your question for them because I'm in the space of cyber psychology. So, I wouldn't be the perfect person to answer this question. So there's one question from Anurag: how to come out of guilt if one is the victim of cybercrime? Thank you so much for asking this question because as we were approaching to the end, we were discussing this only that one needs to build resilience. If that my first view to that topic was that firstly you have to prevent yourself, and because obviously prevention is always better than cure. But in the worst case scenario, if somebody is falling in the trap of a cybercrime, how do they come out of that guilt? Firstly, to realize and understand that it's not their fault. Everybody is a human. Humans make mistakes. But at the same time, just because of that one mistake, one cannot just stay in guilt. So they need to build resilience. And that is exactly why there is a need for resilience building programs and knowing the importance of resilience in post cyber crimes, like post cybercrime experience. So for a person who feels guilty even after a cybercrime, they need to be attending the resilience building workshops and also understand and recognize the fact that they don't need to blame themselves. They are human too, and it is just one act that happened out of mistake or because of not being mindful. So it is okay, but it is not okay to be in guilt because they too are humans. So be aware that it's not their fault. They just need to be resilient, be mindful, and trust me, these resilience building workshops go a far way to help you become more resilient and bounce back from the situation after the cybercrime has happened. There is a question that what is a real life example of scenario based training of cybercrime in the human mind? So the real life example would be role plays. Like for example, if in a corporate setting, for example, the every Friday or every Saturday or every Wednesday after a certain task, one can allot a time. For example, every Thursday during the break time, they can have a role play. A role play workshop is there every Thursday or every Wednesday. Now, that is a real life example. When those role plays are happening, they are trying to prepare you. In every role play, there is a different case. In one role play, there is a phishing role play that one becomes a hypothetical cyber criminal, and one becomes a hypothetical victim. Now, in this case, the audience and as well as the people who are doing the role play will be able to understand that what exactly is happening, the situation. Then they will be able to understand the psyche of the person that is doing the crime and the psyche of the person who is the victim of that cyber crime. So every Thursday, for example, that role play is happening. One day on phishing, one day on scam, one day on digital arrest, one day on trolling, etc. So this is a real life example. These workshops, these role play sessions in corporate settings or in any setting for that matter. Then there is a question: what action someone can take if any person blackmails? If any person blackmails, firstly you need to reach out to firstly the person you trust in your family, reach out to your family, and also reach out to the helpline. Now a lot of times what people miss out on is that they do not reach out the helpline within the 24 hours. In fact, why do you even have to wait for the 24 hours? Why don't you just approach the helpline as soon as possible? Because remember, As soon as you are able to reach out to that helpline, the more are the chances that you will be able to, retrieve back your data also, even in situations where, for example, a thing has been stolen or the data has been breached. There it is very advisable to first reach out to the helpline as soon as possible within the 24 hours, so that the action can be taken at the earliest. Then there is a question on how does the online environment anonymity, invisibility change human behavior compared to offline. Very interesting question. So example that I gave earlier is of trolling. And apart from trolling also, let's just take another example. For example, if you think that somebody is interacting with you, you are talking to somebody online on a chat, on messages, right? And when you're talking to that person, you feel that person is so open, they are so, extrovert, they are very humorous, they are very lively. But when you meet that person in the real life setting, for example, if you don't know this person and you feel that, you make an image in your mind that, okay, this person might, must be lively, they must be very extrovert, they must be very, enthusiastic about conversations. Now cut to when you are actually meeting them in the real world setting, in the real life setting. When you meet them, you see that they are totally introvert, they are totally very silent, very quiet, very calm and composed, and they don't exactly, equate to what you saw in the online setting. So that is the comparison that is happening, that is the difference, that in the online setting they are very different, and in the offline setting they are totally different. And you might be seeing it yourself, in yourself or in your friend's case, that in your friend group, maybe you're chatting to your friend and that friend is so enthusiastic and so humorous and so extrovert in the chatting and everything in the online setting, but in the offline setting they're the most quiet people. So that is also another example of how the behavior varies. And the behavior varies because of many reasons. Firstly, there is no physical presence in the online sphere. Secondly, of course, there is anonymity sometimes in many cases. And thirdly, when you're talking in the online space, you feel that, what is the result of it, what is the consequence is much less as compared to the offline setting. So the chances are that the person is going to, very behave very differently. And there is a very interesting concept of real self and your online self here. You must read about it. It talks about how your real self differs from your online self. If there is a lot of difference, there is a lot of, I would say, difference between how you behave online and how you behave offline. So there are more difference in how you are perceiving yourself, your self perception, and your online perception. So it's not really healthy. But if how you behave online and how you behave offline is very same, that is a healthy connection, that is a healthy relation between your online self and your offline self. So there is a question that if cognitive biases are a permanent part of human nature, is complete cybersecurity ever truly possible? See, when we are living in the age of technology, it's not that something is completely, possible. That, for example, there is no 100% guarantee for anything. And when I talk about anything, it's anything. You cannot even guarantee that twins, twins would be same in nature, or they would have the exact same features on their face. They might have a slightly, different nose, a slightly different behavior. So nothing is truly 100% guarantee. But yes, cognitive biases is something that is there in us, but we can make it better. We cannot, if we cannot, completely eradicate something, at least we can make it better, right? We can improve ourselves. For example, in confirmation bias, how can we improve that? In confirmation bias, we are looking for pieces of information that agrees with us. We are trying to look pieces of information that we think that, yes, this makes me feel that I'm doing the right thing, I'm thinking the right thing. But how we can make it better? You can actually make it better by listening to diverse views, allowing others to give you, feedback, allowing others to tell their views, their viewpoints, that what exactly do they think, what is their viewpoint. For example, if you think this kind of certain behavior is okay in the online sphere, that is confirmation bias. And you look for pieces of information in conversations in the online sphere that makes you think that this is okay. But maybe when you're talking to your friend and they tell you something else, that no, this is not right in the online sphere, or this is right in the online sphere. So taking that input as well, understanding that input as well, that is how you're improving your cognitive bias. So definitely cognitive biases are something that we are humans, so we have that. But we can actually improve that and actually make it work for us as a strength rather than as a weakness. I believe I have covered all the questions. In case I've missed out on any, please let me know. Or if in case anybody else has a question, this is the questioning session. Okay, there's a question. Can ethical education penetration since the early childhood education reduce the number of crime offenders? Again, we need that. Firstly, there needs to be a large implementation of these programs. There needs to be a large implementation of a lot of these things. Like, for example, when we are talking about scenario building strategies, when we are talking about educational sessions and workshops, these things will help, definitely. But there is a huge role of the environment as well, of the consumption of information as well. For example, there is a child who will consume information regarding cybercrime rates, about the cybercrime reasons, the prevention of cybercrime, versus a child who is maybe brought in an environment who does not have that much awareness, that much information, did not have that much access to knowledge. So if they're not having that access to knowledge, maybe they're not able to distinguish between what was right and what was wrong. So there are a lot of factors that come into play, so we cannot necessarily say that these particular things are going to reduce like cybercrime offenders, because there is a huge role of factors at play, be it environment, be it psyche, and of course the profiling aspect that we covered in the session. Because of the profiling aspect, we also study the different traits and different aspects that people have. So these things like ethical education penetration since early childhood will definitely help. But again, there is no proper guarantee that it's going to totally reduce it. Why? Because there is going to be a lot many factors, and we need a heavy implementation in practical setting as well. How cyberpsychology reduces how cyberpsychology can reduce the cybercrimes and effects of crimes, very important. And how is because when you are studying about cybercrimes and cybersecurity, you get to know about frameworks, tools, you get to know about the crime. But now just think about it. If you are trying to repair a car, but you are not actually understanding the major mechanics of it, the major mechanics through which it's going to work, through engine, you are not studying that engine, how do you think that you will be able to drive a car so well? And that is exactly how I correlate it with cyber psychology. If a cybercrime is happening, if a cybersecurity measure is being built, the major engine is here, the mind, the human mind. Technology is just a tool. The technology is just a medium for anything to happen, to be conversed, to interact, etc. But to understand the mind is the main game. That is the main plot twist. So, cyber psychology, by understanding cyber psychology, we are able to understand the human mind. We are also able to understand how the psyche of the criminal offender in the cyberspace functions and the victim functions. So it can help us reduce the cybercrime rates by understanding and building frameworks. Because if you are able to understand the human mind, the psyche, you will of course be able to implement the same things in a framework to bounce back, to reduce the number of cybercrimes. And that is why the role of cyber psychology is something that we all must be aware of, and it becomes very important to know further more about it. All right, I think I have covered the questions, but yeah, again, in case there are any other questions, please feel free to reach out. And yes, you can reach out to me on, other than the session, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and yes, or email. And I would be happy to, you know, guide you and provide an insight wherever I can.
Thank you, ma'am, for addressing every question with such clarity. This session has reshaped how we understand cybercrime from the human mind and the broader implications of psychology, technology, and governance. With this session, our day comes to an end. Hope you all enjoyed the discussion. On behalf of the organizing team, we extend our sincere gratitude to Drishya Duggal for delivering such an insightful and engaging session. Her clarity and real world examples have given us and has given all of us strong beginning to this journey of digital safety and cyber psychology. We would request you to fill out the post assessment form via the QR code displayed on your screen. Without the feedback form, you will not be able to get your certificate. Now we move on to another important session of the course on day 2, 26 February. We have a session on telecom intelligence and digital evidence, CDR, IPDR, SIM, RAP, ecosystem, and Oniscent, which will be delivered by Ms. Sushmita Dubey. This session will help us understand how telecom data and digital evidence are used in cybercrime investigations and how techniques like OSCENT support intelligence gathering. Until then, stay aware, stay curious, and keep strengthening the shield. Good night.
Thank you so much, Manyata, and thank you so much, team, for having me here. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.